Sometimes spending in an economy can get out of balance with the productive capacity of the economy. Sometimes the economy goes through shocks. And what is going to cause a shock is often unpredictable. Maybe it could be the collapse of a large company. It could be a major, relatively recent example of this is the crisis of 2007 2008. The crisis was actually complicated, but it involved several things, including we had a crisis of confidence regarding the value of housing. People had been expecting housing to get more and more expensive, so they were paying more and more money for houses. At some point, people's sentiments changed where they decided that we're not going to pay as much for housing anymore, which meant that a number of people who had borrowed large amounts of money to buy houses, their houses were no longer worth the amount that they had borrowed to buy those houses. That causes a crisis in their finances, and that reduces their ability to spend money. The people who had borrowed money to buy houses could no longer afford to pay back the money that they had borrowed. The lenders were also now in trouble, including banks. So the crisis of 2007 2008, it affected people's psychological beliefs about the economy, and it influenced their spending behavior. So this was a negative shock which reduced people's willingness to spend. The example I'm talking about here is the 2007 2008 time period in the United States economy. And if people are not willing to spend money to buy goods and services, buy things like housing, it reduces other people's income. So again, going back to the plumbing example, if people decide that they're all going to postpone repairs to their plumbing systems, it's going to result in a decrease in income for plumbers. And as a consequence, because plumbers have less money, they will be able to spend less money on the things that they spend money on, whether it is cars, whether it is housing, whether it is food, clothing, etc. And think about this happening on a very, very wide scale. People are not willing to spend money, and as a consequence, this reduces other people's income, which further reduces people's ability to spend, which further reduces people's income. As you can see, all of this creates a vicious cycle of falling spending and incomes. And remember, nothing has happened to the economy's productive capacity. The economy still has plenty of plumbers who are able to do the plumbing if somebody would call them to do the plumbing. They are willing to upgrade and repair plumbing or install new plumbing. There are plenty of people who are able to produce clothes, shoes, housing. But because people are no longer willing to spend, the incomes for people who are selling their labor, capital, and entrepreneurial talent in order to produce these goods and services, they have less income, and it creates a vicious cycle of falling incomes and falling spending.